This video has spoilers. Okay, so real quick before we get into the video, really appreciate the fact that we broke 800 views on the Dead by Daylight video. Even though I've seen bigger success on this channel, that was a while ago. I really put a lot of effort into that video, and seeing it get some recognition really gives me a warm, tingling feeling in the abyss that I call a heart. Honestly, after the shit reception of the 2042 video, I was contemplating moving to low quality shorts content because that shit seems to pull all the views. This is getting too long and unnecessary. Let's just get to the video. Sifu is,
Help me!
well, it's a pretty good game. I played it quite a few times myself. And the Game Awards gave it a bunch of nominations as well, like Best Indie Game and Best Fighting Game? It's one of those games where you pay the developers to whoop yo ass. So yeah, solid recommend, but we're getting ahead of ourselves here. What is this video about? So for those of you who don't know, this game has a mechanic where you can revive yourself at the cost of aging. There's obviously a limit to how much you can age. The game starts you off at the age of 20 and stops you once you go over 70. Now that's cool and all, but the game has an achievement that requires you to finish the game at age 25 or less, which means I can die once per boss. Now I'm pretty grateful to my mom for putting up with my dumb ass and raising me, and I guess the day was going pretty well, so I decided to actually do it. Yeah, so I decided not to be too hard on myself because I'm a little new to this entire play games as a chore for content thing. So I put a few conditions here. No saves going. Yang must be spared. I don't know what the game considers as finish the game, but you only see the credits roll in the Wu Day ending, which means Yang must be spared. No weaves coming. I know this is a very gatekeepery rule to have, but fights, boss fights especially, where all you do is weave, are pretty boring and long, so I decided to have this rule. Obviously weaving is allowed. Like I said, it's cheesing the game with weaves that isn't allowed. Since getting straight to the point would have been way too easy, I've decided to talk about the stages a little bit as well. The squats are the first actual stage in this game. Well, I guess it's supposed to be the squats is. Never mind that. This level is the first in this game because you actually have a health bar. But it's also an extended tutorial stage where the game teaches you basic universal mechanics under pressure. So it's a pretty good tutorial, but at the end of the day, it is a tutorial. It has the easiest boss and is a straightforward stage. This is where the game's gonna decide to teach you about enemy mechanics like grabs and failed takedowns. I'm not sure if these takedowns are entirely scripted, but I do know that there are fixed areas where enemies actually reverse your takedowns. If you remember these spots and be careful to just whittle down their health instead of going for fancy guard break takedowns, you can avoid getting your ass handed to you by a seemingly random mini-boss. Other than that, yeah, not much to it. Fajar isn't a particularly hard boss, and I actually managed to beat him without dying at all, which means I have one spare life to use as I wish, and I decided to save it for Yang. The only thing hard about Fajar is that it's really easy to kill him, which made getting his talisman kinda hard because he would run out of health before I could break his guard a second time to spare him. The club is where things start getting serious. The game throws a bunch of mini-bosses your way and the combat gets a lot more freeform because the game is no longer guiding you. But this stage is also where the importance of weaving becomes more apparent. Aesthetically, I place the club as my second favorite stage because it does a lot of cool things with Sean's element, fire. Oh yeah, did I mention that every boss has an element? It's a pretty neat concept and is used well, especially for the second phase of each boss, but we're getting off track here. You can get by the game so far without weaving but once you get to Sean, that goes right out the window, especially for the purpose of this challenge. Parrying his hits results in you taking a considerable amount of structure damage, so you either get rolled or weave and recover structure, while also staying in aggro range, waiting for him to come out of his combo and get a chance to hit and maybe even stagger him. I died once on his second phase, but that's alright. It's 1 life per boss, and I was currently in the lead. The museum. This is my favorite stage in the entire game. The aesthetics, the plot, the boss, the fight choreography, everything was just perfect. Like, I can recommend the entire game for the museum alone. Like, if the game was nothing but the museum, I'd still buy it. Full price, not even an exaggeration. Like, the isolated story of Kiriko and how she had to kill her sister and how the pain and rage drove her insane, among other things, is just and got me completely invested in the game's plot, and is the reason why I decided to complete the detective board. Don't get me wrong, it's not the best storytelling in video games, it's not Spec Ops The Line or Disco Elysium, but it is a solid story, and the way the museum tells the entire story and the art, it just brings everything together for one of the best stages in a video game ever. Like, while I was collecting footage for this video, playing the game at this point has gotten a little stale considering the amount of times I needed to play a particular stage over and over till I get things right, and then there's practice runs and then a run just to get some footage. But I never felt that staleness while I was playing through the museum. Fighting Kiriko, as fun as it is after figuring out how to get past her, is still really hard for the purpose of this challenge. I am, of course, talking about her first phase. The real problem with the first phase was that she uses a lot of fast and ambiguous strikes, so dodging and parrying was always a coin toss for me. But I was allowed to die exactly once, and that gave me a little bit of breathing room, but it was still pretty hard. The second phase, although easier, was nothing to laugh at. It's one of those things which looks easy, but it's not. It just isn't. What do I mean? Well, her moves are a lot easier to judge, sure, but she hits like a goddamn truck in her second phase, and God forbid you block instead of parrying or weaving. The chip damage she does is enough to take down an elephant. And then there was the fact that I killed her. It was a hard decision, but the run was going pretty well, and I decided not to ruin the flow by trying to spare her and just killed her. I still feel like shit for doing it.
Don't make this fun!
Ah yes, elderly abuse, the stage. Now, don't get me wrong, I love overthrowing capitalism as much as the next guy, but this stage just didn't stand out much for me. Maybe it's just that it was an otherwise cool stage that came right after one of the best and most mind-blowing stages in the entire game, or maybe I just wasn't vibing with the stage. You might say that the clean, slick, and almost clinical interiors were boring, but there's also an underground network of caverns that opens into this weird arena thingy, and while describing the entire thing, it sounds really cool, but you know. It probably was Kiriko having a phenomenal stage that really screwed Jinfeng over. Fighting her isn't particularly better. She has about 2 combos in her first phase, which she alternates between. You just keep pace with that, nothing too hard, nothing too fancy. The second phase adds a few things and changes the final blow in one of her combos to be a grab, which ramps up the difficulty enough to keep things entertaining, but at the end of the day, there's nothing that I in my extra life couldn't handle. After having ridden this entire section, I've come to the realization that maybe I was a little too hard on this stage. Don't get me wrong, the entire game is phenomenal, but it's just that once you drop a stage like the museum, it really sets expectations for future stages really high. It's an expectation that Yang and the Sanctuary meets, but Jinfeng just couldn't. So yeah, not boring, pretty cool stage, the elevator sequence being a highlight, but it kinda missed the mark for me personally. Okay, this is it. The final stage where you fight Yang, the guy who killed your father and destroyed his entire school. This is what the entire game has been building up to. You finally get to exact your revenge on him. The protagonist is fidgety with anxiety. The game's coming to a close and we all know it. Time for revenge. In another run, maybe. Right now we're going for the Wu Day ending, which honestly is a lot more satisfying. While there isn't much to talk about when it comes to the stage itself, there is a lot that had been happening on our way here. We found out that Yang did what he did because our father and his organization of guardians held a key to saving his family, but he wasn't allowed to use it because, you know, we guard the talisman and cheating death is abusing power. Reasonable stuff, but we also see why Yang did what he did, and we also know that he currently uses it in his sanctuary to heal people. So he's not all that bad. But we need to keep in mind the fact that the Guardians were never wrong either. Fajar was using his talisman to make a Chinese remake of Breaking Bad, so it follows that Yang is someone I can sympathize with, but he's not someone that I'll be backing in a discussion about the ethics of everything that went on in this game. Coming to the boss fight, Yang is definitely one of the better crafted boss fights, one that you can't cheese with focus. You absolutely have to learn his attack patterns, and while weaving is an option, weaving alone makes the fight painfully long, and just mashing attacks between weaves won't work either, because if he's in his counter stance and God forbid you sneeze in his general direction, he will send your ass to Pound Town. And did I mention that it becomes painfully long if you don't parry? So yeah, you will really need to learn him and his moveset to make any headway at a reasonable pace. And I had to do just that. After I was done with the entire thing though, I realized that this was just way too easy, and milking this for content was probably not gonna be enough, so I get to the part that I really regret. Yeah, I went for a no death run. The base parameter is simple, end the game at 20 years. The same rules as the previous challenge. After having prepared myself mentally, I decided to jump right back into the gauntlet while the muscle memory was still there. Starting up with Fajar, he wasn't a challenge really, and I had already beaten him without dying, but I wanted to go through him again because I don't want to cut any corners for the no death run. It was really uneventful though. On to Sean, and honestly he was a lot easier than I thought he'd be, and I managed to get through him without dying on my first try as well. Although I relied a bit more on parrying this time around to cut down the time it took me to get through the fight. Mixing in a few parries with all the weaving shaved off a lot of time.
Now leave, or be forced to.
Now for Kiriko, and this one was hard. It's crazy how much difficulty can change by getting rid of just one life. But that's good, because up until now the runs were going a little too smooth, so it was nice to see things taking a turn for the harder. Also, it's crazy how I almost had this on the first try, but then decided to spare Kiriko and got absolutely bodied, and then had to try to spare her a few more times. I said I could fix her, and I'll be damned if I was gonna finish the run without fixing her.
But I'm not done yet.
Jin thing was surprisingly easy, probably because of the fact that she only has 2 combos that she switches between. Or maybe that's just what happens after beating Kuroki without dying, I don't know. That being said, things weren't exactly a cakewalk.
In the end, you're still that same child I knew. Helpless. Like the night I killed your father. You're here, in front of me, only because of this pendant. But what if I take it from you? Will you fear death once again?
You sound like the frightened one to me.
And we're back at Yang. And this is when I realized how hard just getting to Yang was, but with a little bit of time I found a way to more or less consistently get through Yang's lackeys. And I had become something of a parry god myself and found myself breezing through phase 1 consistently. I don't think I can say the same for a second phase though. I'm not sure really what happened, but eventually I made it through and can safely say that I do not want to try and get any other achievements for this game. Not gonna lie, I really wanted to make a Sifu video, but for the life of me, I just couldn't figure out what type of video. But I really liked this game and wanted to give it a shot, so I did this video, and maybe it doesn't work as well as the Dead by Daylight video did. Maybe people don't find the video as good, but I have like 400 subscribers and I was really itching to make a Sifu video. You can serenade me in the comments, don't be shy, I can take it, I think. I'll only cry for like an hour, I swear. Okay, this sounds like a pretty good place to end the video.